Hey, everybody, welcome in. Thanks so much for joining the Create With Us podcast for episode 13, where we take you behind the screens. My name is Brett Barley, joined as always by my dude, Jeff Vinn. Jeff, how are you today, man?
What's going on, Brett? Doing pretty good today and pretty excited about today's guest. We're going to get a little glimpse into how marketing has been done at like the Fortune 500 level with messaging and branding and reputation. So I'm excited to see what we uncover because we work with like more small to medium-sized businesses on here. So these lessons will apply with our guest, Lori.
That's right. Absolutely. Looking forward to it. Let's tell you a little bit about Lori Sussie Bonanni. She is the founder of ELSSUS LLC, which is a multidisciplined communications consulting firm. Lori builds and grows companies' reputations, thereby increasing awareness, business results, and credibility. Think of her as a non-traditional publicist for companies as early as startups and as established as Global 500. So without further ado, let's bring Lori on in. Lori, how's it going today? Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. Hello. Thank you.
Thanks for popping in. So let's jump right into it, Lori. We want to find out all about you. Let's kick it right off. Lori, why don't you tell us a little bit about your hustle? Tell us what you do, where you're from, a little bit of your background for the people watching.
Sure. So I am Lori, and I build and grow companies' reputations to increase awareness, business results, and credibility. You might be asking, what does that mean? And it means that I am like a non-traditional publicist for companies as early as funded startups and as established as blue chip companies. You asked where I'm from. I grew up outside of Philadelphia. I currently live in upstate New York. What was the other question you had?
Well, how did you get into the career path that you're in? How long have you been doing it? Let's pretty much the history. Let's Tarantino this thing. We'll start at the end and then work our way from there. So how long have you been doing this? How did you kind of get into this career path?
Sure. So I've had my company. I've had the LLC for about 3 years. But prior to that, I guess to take you all the way to the beginning, when I was applying for college, a long time ago, I was looking at applications and I was like, God, what do I want to study? And after I knocked off a lot of stuff, it came into like communications, and I was like, oh, this could be like a cool career path. And I don't know if you know the show Who's the Boss, but I was like, I want to be like Angela Bauer. And she was an ad exec. And basically I went to school for that. And, most people graduate and don't do whatever they graduated with their degree. But I went right into, I moved to London on a visa program, and I went up working for a publishing company. As an admin. I came back to the US. I started working with a company that was starting in the US and had been based in Europe. So it was a nice reminder of where I had been. That was communications. They're now part of Ogilvy, which is a major agency. Was all pharmaceutical, not direct to consumer. I left there to go to DDB, which is an advertising agency network. And I worked on business development there, which communication is hugely important in terms of pitching and winning business. Left there and I went to NBC. This is the super quick version. At NBC, I worked with the sales team and I came up with added value marketing campaigns. Had enough and wanted to travel. Quit that job to go backpacking in South America. When I came back, wow. I said that I would, set some stuff in place to have work, and I did. The idea was to ultimately leave New York City. Mm-hmm. I loved freelancing so much at the time that about a year and a half after I got back, I was still freelancing, and I was like, oh, I probably should find that full-time job, because doing that full-time didn't really cross my mind yet. Moved to Atlanta briefly for a job. 15 months later, got laid off as the only marketing team member. I was the head of marketing. And so that kind of gave me time to think, like, do I really want to go back to another corporate job? And it was really did not take a lot of soul searching to say, no, I don't. I loved what I was doing when I came back from South America. I want to do that, for sure. And so I put a note on Facebook and said, I'm open to clients. And I was put in touch with someone that I knew from college. And at this point, lots of years had passed. And she put me in touch with somebody who became my first client. It was a startup out on the West Coast. And then I started working to find more clients and, got put in touch with Verizon and started consulting with them. And then it was like, yeah, I can do this. I should make a company out of this. And then a couple of years passed. I had my daughter, and then it was like, no, let's make this let's establish this as a business. And so I went from freelancer to business owner. And it's always been in the communication space. As a consultant now, I find myself landing in tech, healthcare, education, food and beverage, and travel and tourism, which after working at, DDB and NBC, I had worked on, every industry from like tires to toilet paper and, B2B to big pharma. And so I figured out where I really wanted to be and where I wanted to land. And it's seemingly rarer and rarer to be doing what you did when you went to college. But I'm the example of that.
That's really cool. I wanted to hop in on a couple things. You worked for DDB and Ogilvy. These are like huge, hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue ad agencies, right? So these are the ad agencies that do the work for giant international corporations. Is that correct?
Correct.
So you got to have a lot of experience in how the bigger brands did it. And later on, I want you to contrast how it works for small and medium businesses, because it'd be interesting to see where there's similarities and differences.
It's actually very funny that you say that. One of the things that more so at NBC than at DDB, but when I was working with, smaller brands or hyper local companies that wanted to have a hyper local presence, there may have been a smaller budget. And I used to joke around that I loved working with the clients with a smaller budget because you had to be so much more creative than a company that just had unlimited funds.
That's great. I just want to say, I don't know if it can't be anybody else's mind, but every time I hear NBC, I have to go WNBC, little reference. But that's great. That's awesome. So it's kind of the American dream. You know what I mean? You followed your passion, and now you're here. So let's get into talking about ELSSUS. How does ELSSUS help businesses grow? And I'll let Jeff kind of step in a little bit here, but tell us a little bit about what ELSSUS does for the clients that you work with, kind of process beginning to end.
Sure. So I call it a multidisciplined communications consulting firm, and basically, it depends on a client, right? It depends on what their needs are and what their goals are. And that might not necessarily be the same thing. So really helping them figure it out. So I've been with clients where I'm the stopgap between no marketing team and their first hire. I've been the, outsourced CMO. I have been, a fractional CMO, which is, ironically, they're different things. And then I have also been with marketing teams that I'm an outsourced person on that team, to either help with a project or bring in certain expertise. So really for every client, it depends. And in terms of what I can offer, it just runs the gamut from, content creation and thought leadership to partnerships and helping with launch, pre-launch and post-launch activities. Obviously there's public relations, in terms of internal communications and crisis communications planning, as well as media relations, which is what most people think of. But then also, I have a business development background, so I've been able to work with companies to help, craft their business development plans, and with different clients, different things. So I had a local food and beverage client, and pre-COVID, we did lots of events and worked partnerships with restaurants and sampling, and we had brought a chef in, and that obviously went away during COVID. I've worked with clients to revamp entire websites. I've worked with clients to do crisis communications planning. And so it really, I used to, before I really, Shoemaker's Kids had my own tagline. It was like, well, in communications, I can do anything. And then I really picked up the things in my background that I really, really enjoyed doing. And thankfully they aligned with things that I was really, really good at doing.
That's awesome. So it sounds like you really start with the strategy. We got a bit of an echo there. Sounds like the strategy is super important to you. So coming in where the client's at, figuring out where those pieces are needed, and then you have the ability to get them all the way done to the execution. Talk to us about the role copywriting plays, because copywriting is a bit of a mysterious one for me in the sense that every piece of thing that goes out, from like the tagline on the company to the mission statement to internal communications to, a paid ad or a description on LinkedIn, involves copywriting. And a lot of times it's kind of hard to do and often overlooked. So what role does the copy play in the messaging?
Content is king, and the writing is the most crucial part. And I'm somebody that used to circle typos and take out menus. So I can't tell you how many times I'm reading a document and, you'd see like not even misspellings, but just like poor grammar. The copy is everything, right? That's what's going to get shared. It's what's going to get read. It's going to reflect on the company. I'm working on a project right now with a client who knows that I am meticulous about writing. And obviously everyone makes mistakes, so I'm not going to say that it's perfect. But he had called me and said, there's a bunch of typos in this document you sent over. And I nearly had a heart attack. And he was like, I'm just kidding. That was just like, it was me. But it was really a testament to like how meticulous and, anal, for a lack of better words, I am about really well-written copy. And if somebody is not good at copy or doesn't want to write the copy, you need to hand it over to somebody who does, because that is really crucial to your brand. And that's what you're putting forward. And it's just super important in terms of what's out there. You lose credibility, if there are errors in grammar, and there's, ways to proofread, creatively. There's sites that help you proofread, even Microsoft Word, while that's not always 100%, they do, there's no excuse for bad writing to go out.
Lori, you probably know about this tool, but we've been big fans of that tool, Grammarly. Have you used it? Yeah. What do you make of that? Because someone said like it's going to make all the written papers from students and people all over the world the same. But on the other hand, boy, it'll catch those stupid looking typos and even address voicing and things like that. What's your take on I
have started using it as like, it's gamified to me, right? So when I put something in Grammarly, like I better get a 98 or a 99, like, so I don't use it as I'm writing. I just use it like right before, and I don't use it all the time, but it's totally a game to me. Gotcha.
Transitioning a little bit, what do you see hot in the marketing world right now? Of course, you've got a lot of digital, a lot of websites, you got the copywriting, branding, events, business development. Like, what strategies here in 2021 are you seeing that are working and that you're pushing?
I think brands are being more human, right? They have never really had to take a stand on anything. And yeah, you guys are both nodding. And I think that before, when a brand took a stand, it was like, whoa. And now it's almost like if a brand doesn't take a stand, it's like, well, why not? Or, and I think that's, indicative of what's going on in life. And, brands want to make sure that, what they're, known for, right? And then it's the choice, right? It's the power of the pocketbook. Like, people are going to support companies that align with them. So I know that right now, Coca-Cola and Home Depot and all these Atlanta-based companies are having a lot of backlash because of, the voter suppression in Georgia. And they have a lot of money, they have a lot of clout, and for people that want to agree with that, without saying too much, that the right side of history, you want to be able to, support brands, that support your goals and your vision. So I think that companies are going to see a lot more backlash if they're not on the side of the majority.
Yeah,
oh, I'm sorry. That's a really good point, Lori, as far as kind of a personality to brands and you know, being a more personable, you know, not only on social media but just in general. How do you find a balance between, like you said, kind of being on the right side of history and not alienating, you know, a lot of the, you know, the consumers or you know, whatever it might be. You know, from your end, what's a good way to kind of go about that? Do you kind of feel it out first and see what other brands are doing? Like, you know, what would you say is kind of the way to go about that?
Well, it's interesting, right? So you have to figure out where leadership stands. You have to figure out where the company stands, you know, and then figuring out like what is the statement you're going to make. I think, and don't quote me, JP Morgan Chase went ahead and talked about, you know, voter suppression is not okay. And he did that in tandem with the head of the Federal Reserve in Atlanta. And so, you know, being able to make a stand, and especially in an industry like banking that is typically super conservative and would never, you know, it's not like a, you know, juice company or something that would, you know, have more personality.
Sure.
And so I think that, you know, being first is not necessarily a bad thing anymore, like stepping into kind of uncharted waters. And it was really surprising that a bank did that, but being able to, I mean, it was great, but being able to, you know, have that conversation internally with the stakeholders, because it has to be believed internally before anybody external is going to believe it. And if those, whatever the case is, if those are not things that are seen internally, it's going to be a lot less believable outside.
that's interesting. What we've seen a lot, even with personal social media or doing the podcast or things like that, and you're mentioning it with the branding, the word authenticity comes up a lot. It's pretty easy to put cookie cutter stuff out there or talk about what we do, like in our case, you know, website and online marketing services, but it's almost like people these days are wanting to connect with something a little deeper, right? How do you go about helping, you know, a brand, a person, a company kind of find that voice? Because I find a lot of times it's hard to describe yourself, or it's hard to describe our company, because a company is really an abstract thing, right? It's made up of the people and the services. It's actually truly not a physical thing. So how do you help companies kind of find that voice and stand out, and also, you know, come from a place of authenticity?
Yeah, that's really digging deep. So when I was in corporate, you know, a lot of that stuff, you know, came out of corporate communications, and, you know, this is what we stand for, and this is, you know, these are our boilerplates. And I think now it's very much like, you know, we got to shake things up. And, you know, if you're not authentic, people are going to call you out, right? That's, you know, what is happening, you know, and I think that there's, you know, multiple things that are affecting that, right? And I haven't been in an office. Most people haven't been in an office, but in an office, you can get that vibe, like the water cooler, or, you know, just being around those people and seeing where people think. Now it's, you know, super siloed. You know, you can chat on Zoom and everything, obviously, but, you know, to hear that day-to-day, you know, chatter is something that, you know, I think a lot of companies are struggling with, which is why, in terms of the authenticity, it really has to come from the top and from leadership. And I think if it doesn't come from there, and I actually just posted this on LinkedIn this morning, a former colleague of mine is at McKinsey, and they had their Asian employee, Asian American, Asian Canadian, Asian Australian employees. They did a beautiful report, and it was all audio, and people, there was, you know, probably 5 sections, and 72 employees, you know, had comments about different things about, you know, advocacy and understanding, you know, their viewpoints. And, you know, this is something that McKinsey put out, who, you know, is also a, you know, very conservative leaning company, and, you know, very, into financials, and they put that out, and it was a beautiful piece, and everyone should read it. But I think that, being able to, come up with that, at a different level, right? My friend is on the content. She's the head of content, and it came from there. And, I think that was something that companies just have to start taking stands with.
That's a really cool example. And that's interesting. So you mentioned the banking company and then a more conservative company like McKinsey actually, grabbing something from the leadership down and taking an authority and a position on it. What's really cool is you see companies that otherwise, like a banking, would stay out of the fray, kind of actually help shape like culture and politics and things like that. That's interesting. I guess it's always been happening perhaps behind the scenes, but, in such a public or forward way. And you mentioned a second ago, it's almost like they're held accountable now, whereas before they could, go behind the scenes and do something or do nothing, right?
Yeah. And I think a lot of people are I think entrepreneurship is obviously increasing for a variety of reasons, but I think people are going to be really picky about where they work and what their company stands for, and does it align with their values?
Nice. So speaking of where people work, and I'm going to let Brett grab it in a second, we're going to transition and revisit some of your entrepreneurial journey. You did a good job of explaining it in the beginning, but sounds like you started it because, you took this little hiatus, and at some point you decided corporate wasn't for you. And I'm curious, what was it about corporate that you didn't like? And what was that impetus to step out on your own? Because I know you gathered a few consulting clients and figure out something was there, but why did you leave corporate?
I think it's a longer story, but so when I left Atlanta, I was laid off from a company. We came up to upstate New York. My husband had been freelancing, and we were, for a lack of better words, homeless and unemployed. And I was like, I'm not gonna live up here. It's too cold. I don't like snow. And basically, 8 months after freelancing, I was like, it was really nice to be around family. And, I was around my nieces and nephews, and I said to my husband, I think I could live here, which after he picked up his jaw off the floor, I said, the only caveat, there were a couple, but the big one that's relevant here is I need to be an entrepreneur. I don't want to go back to corporate. And if we live here, while Rochester is, booming and has like lots of stuff going on, I really was just like, nope, I want to be able to travel to my family. I want to be able to not have vacation days, and be able to like work when I want and where I want. So that was really the deal, was if we were to stay here, that we were going to, he was going to support my entrepreneurial journey.
That's right. Some of this thought process came when you were, tell us real quick before Brett goes back to the questions. Your South America journey. So you took off and you went backpacking down there for a period of time. How was that?
Yeah.
And how long did you go for?
It was amazing. My boyfriend, who is now my husband, I said, let's just like quit our jobs. And he was at DDB. That's where we met. And I was at NBC, and he was like, no, I like my job. And that just seems really like crazy. And I am known for crazy ideas. And basically I said, well, I think I'm going to go. And he was like, well, I support you, because, if we get married and have a kid, like we're not going to be able to go. And so stay tuned on that one. But I said, okay, I'm going. And so I went for about 3 months. And I always joke that he met me at the end for like a regular vacation, like vacation time. And I always joke that he met me at the end to make sure I got on the plane to go home.
That's great. So what, if you had to say what, on your entrepreneurial journey so far, what would you say has kind of been the most rewarding thing about it? What's your biggest takeaway on what you've learned so far and appreciated the most about working for yourself?
There's a lot. I think the biggest, reward is just being able to know that I did it, right? I am a very type A person. And so if I set a goal, I'm usually going to achieve it, or, decide if that's the right place to go. And knowing that, when I land a new client or I get a repeat client or a referral, that just kind of cements it. Like, wow, like I'm doing it, and this happens, and that's super cool. And I think that's been really rewarding. And something else that's been, really rewarding is I've since joined a lot of different networks, and you're not selling to each other, you're not doing anything like that. It's just really supportive communities. And one of the ones that I'm in is called The Upside, and it's for consultants.
Yeah, we had Aaron as a guest on the podcast, actually. Aaron was on here.
I saw, and that has totally upped my game. I can't say enough good things. And everyone is in completely different industries, and it's really great.
That's awesome. So on the flip side, if you had to name what the biggest challenge has been on your entrepreneurial journey, I know that's a little bit of a loaded question, but I guess the first one that comes to mind, what would you say is the biggest challenge you faced so far?
I think as type A as I am, I'm also like super creative. And so the processes and systems, like I've been doing this for a long time, and like I can't tell you how much stuff I do is manual, and it's like always on the to-do list, like automate this, automate that, and it's like, but I have a client, or I want to do this instead. And so I have noticed more and more, like I keep a running list of like the things that I know are slowing me down. And so I think just getting that stuff done has been probably my latest challenge.
Very good, very good. To a little bit of a rapid fire round so that everyone can find out a little bit more about Lori the person. Jeff, you want to hit her with some quick shots here, and don't give her a second to think about it. It's off the bat,
Yeah.
Lori.
Okay, go.
A lot of pressure going.
All right. So obviously work's important and takes up a large part of life, but how do you stay energized outside of work?
I have a 4-year-old daughter, so that keeps me quite energized. But I found that during COVID, everything that I loved pre-COVID is not COVID friendly. So anything relating to obviously travel, restaurants, theater, and live music are the are the things that typically keep me energized. Yeah.
Nice. And if you had to look back in time and speak to your younger self, what's one piece of advice you'd tell her?
Stop overthinking things. Just make a decision and stick to it.
Nice
advice. Yeah, that's definitely some good advice right there.
And what's a book that you highly recommend that we'd read?
Oh, funny. So I recently was asked this question, and there's a book called Vagabonding by Rolf Potts. It's about an uncommon guide to the art of long-term travel. And I read that when I was in South America. And it really was something that really opened my eyes to entrepreneurship as well, because the benefits of travel, which are, curiosity and flexibility, increased tolerance for risk, all make me a better entrepreneur. And anyone that travels really has that in them.
For sure. That's super cool. That's like the gospel or the main book on traveling. I remember when that came out. Yeah. And lastly, what is one thing you're deeply grateful for right now?
Oh, my health and my family, for sure.
Yeah, the basics go a long way, don't they? I find myself getting away from those, like the enjoyment in some of those things, right? Because they're so common and so obvious, but they really are that special, right? There's only one daughter and one mom, and those bonds are so unique, even though we experience them all over the world. So I love those gifts. Cool. What do we got last, Brett?
Yeah. So Lori, before we let you go, why don't you tell everybody a good way to connect with you? We're gonna put we're gonna link you in the description so everybody can get to your stuff. But what's the best way to reach you and find out more about everything that you do and the company?
Sure. So you can go to my website, which is ELSSUS, ELSS, like SamUS.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, or you can find ELSSUS as a company page on LinkedIn. I post a lot of content on there as well.
Excellent. Very good. Very good. Everyone go check it out. support Lori. Lori, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you coming on, and it was an absolute pleasure. I'm sure we'll be talking to you again soon. And everybody that's joined us today, we will see you again for the next episode next week. So Lori, with that, we bid you adieu. Thank you very much, and everyone, enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.